was working with a developer earlier in the week, and he brought up a metric that I hadn't heard before on multifamily, like what you were willing to offer on a piece of land, depending on how many units you can build on it.
Okay.
And pretty much what he said was like 30 units. Say you just get an example of 30 units on a property and dividing the price of the land by the units and like per door to build or per unit, it was like 15,000, 17,000.
Yep.
But I was wondering, when you look at a piece of land for multifamily, if you wanted to see how much you would build, what do you look at to offer on that piece of land, apart from price per square foot?
Just curious, by the way, what did he mention was so unheard of that you haven't heard of before?
So I've heard of price per unit
Hmm.
and some of those metrics, but the amount of units per acre and developers looking at, say, it cost them 15,000, 17,000 per unit on the price of the land.
It's costing him 15,000 a unit per acre,
No. What I'm referring to is so he divides the price of the land by the number of doors he can put on it.
which
And
you should be doing. I agree.
but I hadn't heard of that method before. I mean, I've sorry not to. Oh, I know land can like
No,
drag
it's
on up,
okay. No, I'm trying to understand like where you're getting confused so I can elaborate. That's all.
but it was like running fast numbers on how you can quickly analyze a piece of land, how many apartments you can build on it based off of
Yeah.
75% lot coverage.
Yeah, so
And
all right, let me say it this way because first off, it's very difficult to just assume what you could build, okay? Right? Like there is so many variables when it comes to development that you can never just go, oh, on a 75% lot coverage, you could probably build X. Like that will never be the way that I would ever look at development, ever. Maybe down the road, if hypothetically you've done 5 deals in one town in one zoning code, you'll know that like, hey, if it's in this town in this zoning code, you can probably get 20 units an acre. You know what I mean? Like
mhm,
there is a town in New Jersey called Long Branch, as an example. I've sold 40 buildings in this town, and I'm very confident, based on the zoning, knowing where I can be with certain things.
mhm.
Right. So it's like if it's in R5, you can get, I think right now they just upped it to 40 units an acre. If it's R4, it's only 20 units an acre. If it's R3, I think it's like six, it's something like 6 units an acre or something like that. More importantly, because, that's, let me break it down, right? Like, 'cause when you have land, and we're talking about specifically multifamily development, zoning is a big thing, which you're going to have to confirm you understand what, where the zoning is. Because there are going to be some areas, by the way, in your market, let's just say X town in Washington, where you can't even do a multifamily, right? Like there's going to be areas where you can build multifamily where you can. And then in areas where you can build multifamily, there's going to be all different types of zonings. There's going to be, you might not, I mean, I don't know Washington, but you might need to, like as an example for New Jersey, there's some areas where like it's either you can build them and you can have this one option or it's just not allowed. Right? There's some like very very strict areas. There's this one town called Shrewsbury. I was doing a lot of research in the town because a while ago because I wanted to build apartments in that area because the amount of money that Section 8 is willing to pay in this market is like double every other market for some reason. So like for a one bedroom, they're willing to pay 3,000 a month, which is nuts. Right. And like actually I think it was a studio. It was like a studio apartment. They're willing to pay like $3,000. It was just stupid, ridiculous things. Okay. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll look into this. This is obviously a little while ago. But I was like, okay, they actually have no ability. There is not any zoning in the entire town to build apartments that isn't affordable housing. That's it. They only have affordable housing options. So I just want to be clear, zoning plays a huge role. Okay. This just because you can't make, you go by the zoning codes. It's just what it is. So you have to figure out the zoning. After you figured out zoning, let's say that you have a checkbox. You can build in this area, and it's not always going to be on a per unit. Sorry, per acre basis. By the way, Kevin, like, it's just not always going to be like that.
Yeah.
The frontage matters, right? Like if you have, it's a really narrow lot, but it's really long, you might not be able to build, right? Just because it's 3 acres, but it's just 50 feet wide by a gajillion feet deep. It doesn't mean you can build on it. There might be wetlands. There might be a lot of other things that like you have to take into consideration. But let's just say the zoning is good. Now the question is, how do you evaluate the deal? Well, I would also tell you, by the way, Kevin, there's two types of development buyers. There are the people who would want it with no permits because they just want the land, and then there's gonna be people who go, I'll only buy it on approvals, right? Or I want to say approvals here. There's two types of people. Either they want it with no permits and approvals, or they only will buy it with approvals. This is the version I've done 99% of my business with. The vast majority of deals in development will be typically done here with approvals. So just realize that like most of the time, you don't even need to worry about it so much because like they have to provide you the approvals, which means that you already know like the number of units available to build, right? Like that you will know this number. Now the question is the actual value. This is going to be related to two things. It's going to be related to maybe it's more than two things, but I relate it to the following things. Number one is rents. What can I actually rent them for? Because what's important about development is like, hey, oh, I got let's say 20 units approved. You have to understand, it's the same amount. It's like the what is it called? The laws of diminishing returns or something like that. Where like if you have a small building and you can only build 10 units, okay, you like it actually is cheaper to build 100 units than it is to build 10 units. And I'm saying on a price per unit basis, by the way, because you were like a lot of the cost is infrastructure and stuff like that. So once infrastructure is done, it's not multiplied by the amount of units, right? So that's why number one is rents. The stronger the rents, the better. You can even say, or I'm just going to go on points. I'm not even going to do numbers anymore, but we got rents. That's important. Next is also going to be, unit breakdown, like the bedroom count. Because if someone's like, oh yeah, I've got 70 units approved, Kevin, but they're all studios, that's not great because then my rents are fucked up. But if they go, hey, I've got a 70-unit deal all approved and they're all 3 bedrooms, that's awesome. Most of the time, people want to have roughly 2 bedrooms are like the perfect match. 3 bedrooms are pretty difficult to rent most of the time, depending on location. Because it's like if you're in a as an example, like Miami, right? 3 bedrooms and bigger are sometimes tough to rent because those are full-blown families. Where most of the people who are renting are doing 1s and 2 bedrooms, and then everyone, if you want more space, they typically will just try to get into a house. So like 1s and 2s are good, but the reason why 1s are less, they're more risky, is because 1 bedrooms typically people are only in a 1 bedroom until they have a kid, right? If they have 1 kid, now they need a 2-bedroom minimum. Also, most people want an office. So like most of the time when they're in a 1 bedroom, they're a single individual, right? And then once they get into a relationship, they want a 2-bedroom. So like most of the time, like 2 bedrooms are key, like or the ideal, right? Maybe a few 1s, mostly 2s. Most people just like 2 bedrooms. That's like the best case scenario. Anyways, unit breakdown is very important. And then on top of all that, it's the basically call it cost of construction. When I say cost of construction, okay, what's important to understand is like in it's like Seattle as an example, Kevin. And you have a piece of land, and on that piece of land you want to build apartments. Most likely in Seattle, and like in the nicer parts of Seattle, you're going to have to build very, very, very high quality apartments. Amenities, gyms, like the top world class stuff, right? Like very nice stuff, and spending a lot of extra money on amenities. You might end up spending $500,000, $1 million on amenities. Okay. However, on the other apartments, that's like 5, 10, 20, 30 units, smaller stuff. They don't need a gym. They don't have, they don't need a lobby. They don't need a lot of this type of stuff, which is just going to add to cost, right? So cost of construction is also dependent on location, right? This is all location dependent, like the type of niche clientele you're going to sell or try to rent these units to. So it's all based on location. Because if you're in like, one of these really nice ritzy areas, you're going to have to provide a little bit more. Like in Miami right now, let me give you an example. In Miami, if you're going to want to rent, there is 80 buildings. I'm making this up, but there's dozens and dozens and dozens of buildings, maybe hundreds of buildings, right? Dozens and dozens and dozens of world-class 5-star buildings. And all of them are competing for people like you and I who want to live in, as an example, or live here, as an example, and are willing to pay a decent amount of money in rent, right? But they want world-class amenities. They want pools. They want restaurants. They want coffee shops. They want Amazon lockers. They want lobbies. They want spas and saunas. They want all this kind of crazy shit. So it's like that type of construction is going to be 400 or 500 or 600 a unit, a couple $100,000 a unit. But again, it's going to rent for, $4,000 average a unit. So they'll spend 300 or 400 a unit to build it because the resale value is like 700 a unit. So in other markets, we're like, okay, well, rent's only $1,200, $1,500. it's very fucking difficult to be profitable as a as a contractor or a developer because there's not enough future value in this asset. The math overall, the question really is, again, you take price, divide by units, right? And then you're going to get a number. That's, to me, it's like, everything in New Jersey is typically trading between, really cheap stuff, which is like 15 to 20, all the way up to like 100 a unit, 100 grand a unit. And then there's most of the stuff's right in the middle. But like, I'll explain. This is obviously, A class location. This is like C class location, right? Everything else here is like B or in this range. And then on top of all that, it's like, the amount of units matters. I would rather pay 50,000 a unit or 60,000 a unit, Kevin, for 400 units approved versus, a 20 unit, or I'd rather pay 30,000 a door. You know what I'm saying? So I hope this kind of gives you a better explanation.